Good morning, everyone, and welcome to SCF's Thought for the Day. I'm reading this morning from the Gospel of Luke, beginning chapter 22 and verse 54. Then seizing him, that is Jesus, they led him away and took him into the house of the high priest. Peter followed at a distance. And when some there had kindled a fire in the middle of the courtyard and had sat down together, Peter sat down with them. A servant girl saw him seated there in the firelight. She looked closely at him and said, "This man was with him." But he denied it. "Woman, I don't know him," he said. A little later, someone else saw him and said, "You also are one of them." "Man, I am not," Peter replied. About an hour later, another asserted, "Certainly this fellow was with him, for he is a Galilean." Peter replied, "Man, I don't know what you're talking about." Just as he was speaking, the cock crowed. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him. "Before the cock crows today, you will disown me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly. Now, Peter was one of Jesus' closest disciples. He was one of only a few who went to the healing of Jairus' daughter. Only him and John went up the Mount of Transfiguration. And it's only Peter who's brave enough to walk on water, to step out onto the waves, and to try and walk towards Jesus. But here, what we see is fear. Peter is afraid. And when we're afraid, we respond in very different ways. Sometimes we can go into attack mode and we can be angry and we can blame others. Other times we can go more into a retreat mode and we can run away and hide, or do what Peter did here, which was just to go into complete denial. Fear grips us in different ways, and it's good to know how we respond when we're afraid, because the times around us are very, very challenging, and fear can often be crouching at the door. But Jesus tells us not to fear, but to put our trust in him. There's something really lovely in the resurrection account that we read in Mark's Gospel. When the women go to the tomb and find it open, they see a young man who in Matthew's Gospel we're told is an angel. He's there and he tells the women that Jesus has risen. And he says to them, "Go and tell the disciples and Peter." He specifically mentions Peter, for them to go and get Peter, because I think as a result of his fear and cowardice at that time, Peter was, as we know, utterly devastated, probably felt he wasn't worthy of what Jesus had called him to, ran away, maybe even didn't consider himself a disciple anymore. But the Lord wanted him, and the Lord restored him. He understood Peter's fear at that time. Psalm 46 tells us, "God is our refuge and strength, an ever-present help in times of trouble. Therefore, we will not fear." And in these times, I want to encourage us to be a people of the therefore, to be people who do not fear, because we know that God is our refuge and God will give us the strength to deal with whatever comes our way, and that we need not be afraid. Amen.